The Jets look to enter their bye on a winning note. Can the Jets beat the Colts? Is there anything left in the tank for this team? Let's discuss today on Locked On Jets.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. This is the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's Friday, November 15th, 2024, and I'm your host, John B. from GangGreenNation.com. Thanking you so much for making the show your first listener, first watch every day. Big shout out to you everydayers. This is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets. We do have new episodes each day through the week, Monday through Friday, and today our episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel because new customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, today we're previewing Week 11 action. The New York Jets will host the Indianapolis Colts Sunday at MetLife Stadium. Kickoff time scheduled for 1 p.m. Eastern. The game will be shown on CBS. This game was originally scheduled for Sunday Night Football. It was supposed to be the Jets and Colts on the Sunday night game of the week on NBC, but the game has been flexed out of that time slot, and the reason's pretty simple. Two very disappointing teams. We talked yesterday about on our crossover show about how disappointing the Indianapolis Colts have been this season, but that's nothing compared to the New York Jets. The New York Jets are not just the most disappointing team in 2024 in the NFL. They might be the most disappointing team of the last decade. This was a team that had brought in a lot of big names this offseason. You know, you want to talk about Hassan Reddick. You want to talk about Mike Williams. You want to talk about Tyron Smith. They brought even more big names during the season. Davante Adams. Again, kind of Hassan Reddick, who was both an offseason acquisition and an in-season acquisition. And, of course, the return of Aaron Rodgers this year. And it's not just that it hasn't worked out. It's that it has been a spectacular failure. It's one thing when you go all in and you fall short and you go to the playoffs and you make a run and maybe you lose a tight game in the conference championship game. That's disappointing. And that's a failure of an all-in season. But this is a catastrophe because the Jets aren't just on the way to missing the playoffs. They're on their way to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. This is a bunch of big names, and I think it's fair to say right now it's nothing more than that. It's a collection of big names. It's not a team. And if you look at the way this team has, again, I shouldn't say the team, the collection of big names has performed to this point of the year, you really do have to question the effort level that you're seeing on Sundays. And the worst performance was the game last week against Arizona. And I've been talking about it all week. And the reason I talk about it all week is that if you don't have guys showing effort, nothing else matters. And that's the number one thing in the NFL. You need guys to show up on the field and act like they care. And you see it manifest itself in big ways. You know, you see it manifest itself in, guys just completely busting assignments, but you also see it manifest itself in little ways. When first guys in on the tackles are the second and third guys coming in to help him clean up because, sometimes a guy misses a tackle. When Robert Saleh and Jeff Ulbrich installed this defense, they train their guys. If you see somebody making a tackle, you go help them. You be the second guy, you be the third guy in there. So that way, even if the first guy misses the tackle, we can put him on the ground. That was not happening against the Arizona Cardinals last week. You see it manifest itself in the way they play zone reads. I mean, how many times? Maybe I shouldn't call a single guy out, but Michael Clemens multiple times just being completely undisciplined, trying to get upfield, make the big play rather than do his job. How many times do you see one of these defensive linemen? Javon Kinlaw is a good example. This guy just flies up the field, completely abandons his rushing lane gap assignment because he's trying to make a big play up the field. And you see it in just like the lack of passion this team has, the lack of fire. And I understand that, whenever you get blown out, it seems like there is a lack of passion. But this is a team that, 2 weeks ago against the Houston Texans, it was 2 weeks ago last night, had a great second half. And they all said, this is going to be the turning point. We're going to save our season. We're going to turn it around from here. And then you follow it up with a performance like that in Arizona. You just wonder, are these guys going out there trying to win games? How hard are these guys playing? Are these guys really that focused on winning games, or is this just about getting to the end of the season? Because what we saw last week against Arizona reminds me of what's known as a U-Haul game. A U-Haul game takes place. It's the last week of the season, week 18, when your team's out of the race And, a lot of the players don't actually live full time in the cities where they play. So they've loaded up the U-Hauls, they've cleaned out wherever the house or the apartment they're living in. The U-Haul's already been loaded up. They're just waiting to get out of town. And frequently you see teams in week 18, not deliver the type of performance you're looking for. You see teams that, don't necessarily play, give everything they've got. That's one thing to see in week 18 when the season's over. It's another thing to see it in week 10 when, your season was on the line in many ways. You were 3-6. You did have a chance because of the early afternoon action to get back into the playoff race. Because if the Jets had won on Sunday, they would have been one game out of the final playoff spot heading into week 11. And you play like that. And I think that's the toughest thing right now for the New York Jets. It's not how far out they are now. Two games out and losing a tiebreaker of the final playoff spot, because Denver owns the final playoff spot and they have the tiebreaker over the Jets. So the Jets are not only two back, they lose the tiebreaker to the team currently holding the spot. That's tough enough. But to get going, you have to string together a series of good games. And this Jets team is simply not shown as capable of playing good football for any extended stretch of the calendar. I mean, how many we're 3-7 right now? We're 10 games into the season. The Jets have probably played 4 quality halves of football right now. I'd say the 2 halves against New England week 3. I'd say maybe the first half against Pittsburgh minus the last minute, and the second half against Houston. And maybe you can throw a fifth half in if you want to say the second half against Tennessee. But this Jets team is just not shown as capable of playing good football. And this is the point of the year where you start to wonder, how much do these guys want it? How much do these guys care? And I know that these are explosive points to make. And I usually would never question this stuff. But at some point, you just have to look at what's in front of you and say that, what, this is worth questioning. And, it'll manifest itself again in some little things. It'll manifest itself. And, do we see guys make more effort to help their teammates tackle a guy? Are guys hustling down the field? Are guys, how much are guys trying to do their assignment, or are guys just trying to pad their stats for their next contract? Because in all of these areas, Jets have not given you answers that you'd like the last couple, and really not just the last couple of weeks, but throughout the course of the whole season, with a handful of exceptions. I think another question is, you get to this point in the year, and this is not something we'll be able to tell ourselves, but you can look at the injury report, and when your team is going well, you have guys who maybe play through pain. Will the Jets get that same level of commitment in a lost season, where they have a coach who they know is not coming back? Is this Jets team going to deliver? Does this Jets team have anything left in the tank? And maybe this is old fashioned. Maybe I'm outdated right now, but I think that as a professional, when you're playing in the NFL, you owe it to your fans to try and at least put out a good performance. That doesn't mean you're always going to win. Teams are bad. This Jets team is bad. This Jets team made a lot of bad bets over the course of the last 2 seasons, and that's the biggest reason that they've gotten into the position that they're in. But it's one thing to lose. It's another thing to lose the way the Jets have been losing. It's another, it's one thing to lose. It's another thing to not even be competitive against the Arizona Cardinals. It's one thing to lose to the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's another thing to go out there and make enough mistakes to lose to the New England Patriots just because you completely lack focus. Is this Jets team going to show up? I'm past the point where I can say that a win against the Indianapolis Colts is anything more than just a win, because I have no faith in this team to be able to sustain a long stretch of quality football. Jets win on Sunday. I'm not buying that they're back in the playoff race, but there's a difference between, in a lost season, going down swinging and going down the way we've seen the Jets go down over the last couple of weeks. And I certainly hope that we'll see more passion from the Jets in this game. Hopefully we'll see more effort. Hopefully that performance against Arizona at least has embarrassed them enough to go out there and start playing professional football. Now, here on the Locked On Jets podcast, we'll talk about one of the ways the Jets can start playing professional football, and that's by playing good defense. As we continue here on this Friday edition of Locked On Jets, we'll talk about the new quarterback the Jets are facing, some of the challenges he presents, and some of the opportunities he may present for this defense. Again, that's this Friday edition of Locked On Jets. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by Mint Mobile. With big wireless providers, what you see is never what you get. Somewhere between the store and your first month bill, the price you thought you were paying magically skyrockets. Well, with Mint Mobile, you'll never have to worry about gotchas ever again. When Mint Mobile says $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, they mean it. Say bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with premium wireless plans starting at $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with your existing contacts. Ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile's deal and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/lockedonnfl. That's mintmobile.com/lockedonnfl. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/lockedonnfl. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower than 40 GBs on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is also brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. The Jets somehow favored at home over the Indianapolis Colts. We're going to talk ahead here on the show about some of the reasons the Jets might be favored. It's unbelievable the Jets could be favored over anybody at this point, but FanDuel has the Jets as 3.5-point favorites. If you believe in the Jets, again, a $5 bet gets you $150 in bonus bets if you win. It's FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jets your first listener, first watch every day. Big shout out to you every day. This is the daily podcast covering the New York Jets with new episodes each day through the week, Monday through Friday. Today we are previewing Jets Colts Week 11 action. Two disappointing teams, two teams that expected to be much better than they are right now. This was originally scheduled to be a Sunday night football game. It was flexed out, and when you get flexed out of Sunday night, it means that your season's not going the way you expected it to. The Jets are not the only disappointing team in this game, though. The Colts, of course, are a team that had much higher expectations. Maybe not as high as the Jets had, but I think they expected things to be going a little bit better. And that's especially true at the quarterback position. They were expecting much more. They were hoping for much more from Anthony Richardson, and they really have not gotten what they were looking for. And Anthony Richardson is back in the lineup. The Colts have kind of gone back and forth this week. Originally, they said they were going to start former Jet Joe Flacco, and instead they're going with the second-year guy out of Florida, Anthony Richardson, who's been on the bench the last 2 weeks. Originally when I heard this happen, I heard that they changed to Richardson. I was kind of happy because Richardson's really struggled. I mean, that's how he ended up getting benched, but Flacco's also been struggling. Then I thought about this more, and I thought, you know what, maybe Richardson does present some problems for the Jets, because there's one thing he can do is run the ball. And we know the Jets struggle quite a bit in run defense. If you look at the guys, the Jets' most frequent 4-man defensive line this year, you've got Will McDonald, who's really not much of a run defender. He's developed into a pretty good pass rusher, but he's kind of overmatched in the run game. You've also got Javon Kinlaw, who is completely overmatched against the run. I mean, I don't think Javon Kinlaw should ever see the field except on obvious passing downs, because he's just not very sturdy at the point of attack. And I mean, there are instances where it just doesn't seem like he's very interested in playing his run gap, his run assignment. You also have Michael Clemens, who, let's face it, has been he has not replaced John Franklin Myers. I think the Jets had this vision of Clemens, being a big defensive end who could kind of play the JFM role of being able to both collapse the pocket and be sturdy against the run. And he's shown an ability to do neither. Really, the only out of the big four defensive linemen for the Jets, Quinnen Williams is really the only one who's adept at playing the run. And beyond that, of course, you have Hassan Reddick, and Hassan Reddick is obviously more of a pass rusher than a run defender. The Jets just don't have very good run defenders up front. The Jets made a lot of very poor decisions this offseason when they built their defensive line, and that leaves them exposed, because the Colts do have a 1-2 punch in this run game. They have Anthony Richardson. They also have Jonathan Taylor, who's averaging 4.9 yards per carry. I mean, I think the matchup you got to look at on the Jets defensive line versus Colts offensive line is Quinnen Williams versus Quentin Nelson, because if the Jets are going to have any chance of stopping this run game, Quinnen Williams has to play well. Because we just went through the guys. I mean, the Jets just don't have good run defenders up front. They have a bunch of guys, some of them are okay pass rushers, but nobody outside of Quinnen Williams can play the run. So Quinnen Williams has to be a disruptive force. Quinnen Williams is going to have to make multiple tackles behind the line of scrimmage for a loss. It's really the only way this could work for the Jets. He has to be the type of guy that draws double teams, triple teams, make life easier, redirect the ball carrier. Even when he's not making a tackle, penetrate, force Taylor or Richardson to redirect themselves. That's really that's really the only shot the Jets have of stopping this run game, because we've seen this Jets defense be very, very inconsistent against the run and have some really, really bad moments. Another thing to watch is like the Jets have to play disciplined against when the Colts run option plays. Some of them are called zone reads, but there are other plays where essentially you'll see a guy who's unblocked. And any sort of design quarterback run will typically have an element where there's an option where the quarterback can either hand the ball off or pitch it. And the idea is you'll see a guy who's unblocked, and essentially they're reading that guy. You ever hear zone read? It's because they're reading they're reading the moves of one specific player. If that player goes for the quarterback hands the ball off to the running back. If he goes to the running back, the quarterback pulls it, keeps it, and then runs himself. Michael Clemens in particular was just out of position time after time last week against the Arizona Cardinals. Has been out of position time after time this season against those concepts. I'm sure the Colts have been watching this. And when I changed my mind about Richardson, one of my thoughts was thinking about how Clemens has played the zone reads this year, because it's been really ugly. He's been undisciplined. He's flown himself out of the play. He's committed too early. Playing any sort of option play requires discipline, because you can't commit too early to either guy. If you fly up the field to the quarterback, he's going to hand it off. You'll be out of position. Same if you just go up, fly up the field to try and get the running back. You have to be disciplined. You have to leave yourself in a position where you can take either guy. And of course, it helps if your teammates penetrate. Also, it helps if Quinn and Williams can get up the field, or maybe somebody else can actually make a play for once on this defensive line against the run. But there's going to be a lot on these defensive ends. I think Clemens is going to be the guy they target, because Clemens has been the worst Jets defender against the run this season when it comes to those plays where somebody's unblocked and has to make a read. Another thing that's interesting about Richardson is that he is at the bottom of the NFL in completion percentage, only at 44.2%. And he's only had one game this year where he's completed more than 50% of his passes. And you have to remember, only one game where he's completed more than 50% of his passes. To be a credible NFL quarterback, you don't need to be at 50. You need to be like 62, 63%. So well below average as a passer. But he is 20th in the NFL with a 7.2 yards per attempt average. So there is some big play capability with this Colts offense in the passing game with Richardson in there. He's got a big arm. I mean, the Colts really drafted him, I think, a year ago based on tools. He's a guy, very big, very strong, big arm, explosive, good athlete, guy who could do damage with the ball in his hands as a runner. So Jets defense needs to not have breakdowns this week. We saw that over and over last week. How many times did the Jets leave a guy wide open? And while Richardson's not going to make you pay on a play-to-play basis, the Colts' success rate on offense with Richardson at quarterback, especially in the passing game, is very, very low. There are going to be a lot of 3-and-outs in this game if the Jets can play somewhat credibly against the run, because Richardson's not really shown himself to be an NFL caliber passer at this point. But there is the potential for big plays. And this is a Jets defense that's frequently struggled with communication this year on the back end. It's a Jets defense that's frequently struggled with missing tackles. And if you don't take this seriously, if you just think, Anthony Richardson's not a very good quarterback, you could end up paying, because it could be a big play that costs you the game. I think this is likely to be a very tight affair at the Meadowlands, and big mistakes. Those are the things that swing those games. So the Jets need to play very tight. They need to communicate better on the back end of their defense. They need to tackle well. There was stories this week. Jeff Fulbright had them in pads. They focused on tackling drills. That's where we're at heading into week 11 in the NFL season. The NFL team feels the need to emphasize tackling because they've been so bad at it this year. And there are reasons for that. The Jets need, if the Jets can prevent the big plays in this game in the passing game, Colts are going to be very one-dimensional, and it increases the Jets' odds of winning. Now, here on the Locked On Jets podcast, we'll turn our attention to the other side of the ball. Jets offense going up against the Colts defense can only be described as a really, really average defense. That's not good. That's not bad. They're just average. And we'll go into more details about what challenges the Jets could face against this average defense. Is continuing here on this Friday edition of Locked On Jets. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by Hillsdale College. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? Well, our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free online courses, including Constitution 101, the meaning and history of the Constitution, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, A Land of Hope, and the Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire. If they ever bring in a class for teaching NFL players how to tackle, I'm sure Jeff Ulbrich will have the Jets take that. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced, so you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, and discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon. This is the Locked On Jets podcast on this Friday, previewing Jets Colts Week 11 action at the Meadowlands, a game that is not as big as either team hoped it would be at the start of the season. The game will be played at 1 o'clock Eastern time on Sunday on CBS. Jets offense, which has clearly been struggling, going up against, well, let's face it, average defense in Indianapolis. The Colts right now rank 16th out of the 32 teams in points allowed, 15th among 32 teams in points allowed per drive, 18th in drives that end in scores, 16th out of 32 in rushing yards against per attempt, 14th in rushing touchdowns allowed, 16th in passing touchdowns allowed. This is a team that really a lot of average stats, but one area where they are definitely below average is in passing efficiency. They only rank 27th in net yards per passing attempt on defense. So this is a team that you can throw the ball against. The question is, can the Jets throw the ball against them? And a lot of that will come down to the offensive line. I think you got to look to Olu Fashanu, who seems very likely to make his first NFL start at left tackle. Now he's made some starts at right tackle in place of an injured Morgan Moses, but with Tyron Smith dealing with a neck injury, I don't think it would be logical for the Jets to have Tyron Smith out there. I mean, what's the point of playing him while he's injured? First of all, I don't know how effectively he can play. He wasn't playing that well while he was healthy. Second is that the more he plays, the more you have to pay him, the more cap space you lose. So that, in a lost season, that's a consideration. If the Jets are in the playoff race, you don't care. You're trying to win, so the cap space is worth it. But it makes no sense to play him. It makes no sense to lose cap space while he's injured and while he's ineffective. And third, you would like to get Olu Fashanu some reps, but Fashanu looked overmatched when he was a starter earlier in the season at the right tackle position. So I think the Jets will need to give Aaron Rodgers some help, give Fashanu some help so that Aaron Rodgers can stay upright. We know that Rodgers right now he's a check down guy. I mean, he's afraid of getting hits. He's checking everything down. He's not letting plays marinate. It's been an ongoing issue through the season. I don't know whether this thing can be fixed at all. I'm kind of skeptical it can be, because the deeper we get into the season, the more hits are going to add up on Rodgers, the less likely I think he's going to be to just hang tough in the pocket and try and push the ball down the field. But this is a Colts team that, is average across the board, but you can make plays against them. And I think there's also now a question about Davante Adams' status. Davante Adams apparently has been dealing with an illness. He also has been dealing with a wrist injury. This week he has yet to practice. There's some hope he'll get back on the practice field on Friday. So will the Jets be without Davante Adams? Not to be provocative, but I'm not sure Davante Adams stepping out of the lineup would necessarily be the worst thing in the world for the Jets, because I think Rodgers is trying to force feed him the ball. I think the situation where Rodgers is looking to his friend too frequently, it's coming at the expense of the rest of the offense. And Adams has not been productive. 4 games here, he's on about an 850-yard pace. This is the guy the Jets got him. Jets were claiming he was an elite wide receiver. Well, he's been pretty much a fine number 2 receiver, but he's been getting a lion's share of the targets. And Jets need to look. Rodgers needs to look at Garrett Wilson more. Garrett Wilson has really started to rise to the occasion the last couple of weeks, and then against Arizona, I don't think they really tried to get him the ball enough. Garrett Wilson can make plays against the secondary, I think, if Rodgers looks for him. So that's what you're looking for. And I think you're also just see how the Jets can run the ball. I thought that one of the hidden stories of the Arizona game, I think it was hidden because it didn't really matter at the end of the day. It really had no impact on the game. The Jets actually ran the ball pretty effectively against Arizona. This is a Colts team that's, not terrible against the run, but not great against the run. If you can get Breece Hall and Braylon Allen going, it can help the offense. The problem is that if you get as little from the passing game as you got last week against Arizona, it doesn't really help you all that much. But the Jets were able to run the ball effectively against the Arizona Cardinals. And if you can complement that with any sort of passing game, then you have an offense that's balanced. But look, a lot of this is going to fall on Rodgers' shoulder as it has through much of the season, and he's frankly failed through much of the season. Jets have not gotten what they've needed out of this passing game, and there are opportunities against this Colts defense. Whether Adams is in there or not, and I think at some levels, maybe it's better if Adams is not in there because they won't force feed the ball to Garrett Wilson. On the other hand, you're really kind of pushing your depth if Adams is not in there because you don't have Mike Williams here anymore. Lazard's on injured reserve, so now you're going with Corley and Xavier Gibson. So from that standpoint, maybe it's better if Adams is in the lineup. But look, the Jets have to try and make big plays out of this passing game. If you want to talk about the biggest issue on the offense, it's their inability to hit big plays throwing the football. I mean, last week they had 2 scoring drives. One was 11 play, one was 12 plays, and both of them ended in field goals. You can't rely on the 11, 12 play drive in the NFL. You have to be able to hit big plays. You have to be able to, get 25, 30 yards at once because it's just really tough to ask an offense, no matter how talented. And I don't think this Jets offense is super, super talented, but even if it was a super, super talented offense, you can't ask them to execute 11, 12 straight plays. It just doesn't work that well in the NFL. So, look, the opportunities are going to be there. The question is whether the Jets and Aaron Rodgers can take advantage of them. This is a winnable game for this football team, despite everything we've seen from this team. And look, there's not really any reason to have faith in this Jets team, but the Colts have been bad too. This is a game somebody's got to win, unless it's a tie, but there will be opportunities for the Jets to win this game. I don't think this is going to be like an Arizona game where there's no chance the Jets can win it from the opening kickoff. As long as the Jets show up, the Jets show any sort of effort. If the Jets, try and do these things, if Jets communicate on defense, if the Jets, focus on their run assignments, if the Jets, if Rodgers can stand tough in the pocket, there's no reason the Jets can't win this game and at least go into the bye on a positive note. That's all for today's episode. This has been the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day is our motto. If you enjoyed the show, hit the subscribe button where you're watching or listening so that you'll never miss an episode. If you enjoyed the show and are listening on the podcast source, give it a 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube and enjoyed the show, give this episode a big thumbs up. Helps us out, helps other Jets fans find the podcast. Enjoy your Friday, everybody. Enjoy your weekend. We'll be back after Jets Colts to break down what happened.